Hello and welcome back. In this Black Excellist presentation, we want to celebrate Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history.
Welcome to blackexcellist.com, the site where we share Black excellence, opulence, and affluence. Our mission is to inspire you as we enlighten you.
February has marked the celebration of Black History Month for almost half a century, an annual observance that recognizes the achievements and contributions of Black Americans. But without historian and author Carter G. Woodson, who devoted much of his life to shining a light on Black history, the celebration might not exist. Woodson did not let the persecution and obstacles he faced throughout his life stop him from becoming the esteemed, groundbreaking historian who founded Negro History Week, which today is known as Black History Month. In this original Black Excellist video, we will be featuring Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the American historian, author, and educator. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 1. Carter G. Woodson was born on December 19, 1875 in Virginia. Carter G. Woodson's story began in a similar fashion to the countless number of Black people who came of age during the uneasy years of Reconstruction. The son of illiterate, formerly enslaved people, he grew up on a farm near Canton, Virginia, where intensive fieldwork kept him out of school most days and still barely produced enough food to feed the entire family. Woodson took on the jobs that were available to him, including garbage truck driver and coal miner, but he also sought to improve his standing through a relentless desire to learn. Number 2. Dr. Woodson devoted himself to the highest levels of education. Woodson supported himself by working in the coal mines of Kentucky and was thus unable to enroll in high school until he was 20. Carter then enrolled into Frederick Douglass High School in West Virginia. The time he entered high school, Carter graduated in 2 years and later became the school's principal as he worked toward his undergraduate degree at Kentucky Berea College. Carter would eventually graduate from Berea College and became a teacher and an administrator there. After his college graduation from Berea in 1903, Woodson spent time teaching in the Philippines and also traveled visiting the Middle East and Europe. He studied at Sorbonne University in Paris during his travels. When he returned to the U.S., he enrolled at the University of Chicago and received a second bachelor's degree and master's degree in European history in the spring of 1908. That fall, he became a doctoral student in history at Harvard University and went on to earn his PhD in 1912. Woodson became the second Black man to earn a PhD in history from Harvard University after W.B. Du Bois. Most of Woodson's academic career was spent at Howard University, a historically Black university in Washington, D.C., where he eventually served as the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Number 3. Dr. Woodson was motivated by white historians' tendency to erase Black history. After Dr. Woodson graduated from a relatively progressive Harvard, he embarked on making the history of Black Americans both visible and appreciated. Contemporary historians at the time were white and had a very narrow scope in their historical narratives, their perspectives limited either intentionally or otherwise. Woodson's determination to shine a light on his predecessors' stories solidified as he recalled the moment when a distinguished professor from his Harvard College days informed his class that the Negro had no history, fueling a deep-seated desire in Woodson to prove him wrong. Number 4. Dr. Woodson published his first book, The Education of the Negro, prior to 1861. Dr. Woodson's first book, published in 1915, was on the history of Black American education, as he emphasized the importance and power of the Black American story. He also explained why Black history was not being told, and detailed how the enslavers are responsible for preventing Black Americans from receiving proper education, so as to more easily force them into subordination. He further argued that the perpetuation of this practice and erasure of Black history has benefited white people for centuries. The only way to effectively fight racism, he continued, is to educate the Black community about all that Black people have done for American society, so that this race is no longer regarded as inferior. When researching this topic, Dr. Woodson mentions in the preface that he was particularly inspired by the stories he read and heard over the years about Black Americans who invented and accomplished things even while suffering extreme oppression. Number 5. Dr. Woodson publishes Miseducation of the Negro in 1933. In 1933, Dr. Woodson published his historical and extremely important critique of the American education system that he titled The Miseducation of the Negro. The thesis of Dr. Woodson's book is that African Americans of his day were being culturally indoctrinated rather than taught in American schools. This conditioning caused Black people to become dependent and to seek out inferior positions in the greater American society. The most crucial element in his concept of miseducation hinged on the education system's failure to present authentic African and African American history in the school's curriculum. Woodson found his voice with this sophisticated critique of a post-Civil War education system that was more philanthropic in nature or more focused on training the Negro to work, not educating and empowering him or her to excel. He highlighted America's neglect of purposeful teaching and its embrace of white racist historians who were not genuine in providing an accurate account of America's history that not only included significant contributions from the Black community, but also acknowledged the pains of slavery. His constructive critique gave a lesson on how improving the lives of the poor cannot be done by a bunch of nice people with money, but rather change has to be systemic, radical, and practical. Because as he stated in one of his most famous quotes, when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. Number 6. Dr. Woodson drafted and circulated a pamphlet promoting Negro History Week. Meanwhile, Dr. Woodson urged Black schools and organizations to find ways to celebrate the accomplishments of their race. His Omega Psi Phi fraternity brothers responded with the creation of Negro History and Literature Week in 1924, and Woodson soon took the idea to the next level in 1926 when he pioneered the celebration of Negro History Week, designated the second week in February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln on February 12th and Frederick Douglass on February 14th. He would herald the celebration in his Negro History Week circulars, causing a stir in the direction of active participation after mailing them to several Black schools, civic organizations, literary societies, and radio stations. As years went on, Dr. Woodson would offer promotional materials to those who agreed to take up the celebration, as well as guidance on how to shape such festivities. One of his early mantras was to not just to emphasize Negro history, but to highlight the Negro in history. Number 7. Negro History Week gained popularity with help from teachers and church leaders. Early Negro History Week celebrations included banquets, speeches, parades, and lectures, many of which were free for the public to attend. The community events caught on with the help of the teachers and church leaders who encouraged involvement, as well as the organizers and featured participants who were expected to generously donate their time to the cause. Several Black newspapers also hopped on board with the movement, with the Philadelphia Tribune, the Chicago Defender, and the Tampa Bulletin among some of the biggest and early supporters of the effort. By 1937, Woodson had another means of promoting Negro History Week with the launch of the Negro History Bulletin, a publication that proved more accessible to working-class Blacks and children that had a wider and more relatable reach than his scholarly Journal of Negro History. Number 8. Dr. Woodson was disappointed in the school's failure to adopt Black history. Negro History Week became a mainstay in areas with major Black populations like New York City, Chicago, Detroit, and Washington, D.C., as well as smaller Black communities in the South. Woodson would leverage his Negro History Bulletin to publish the success of the celebrations, as well as the enthusiastic feedback of teachers and volunteers. However, Dr. Woodson wasn't satisfied with the celebration being limited to 7 days out of the year. He hoped that Negro History Week would spark the development of immersive curricula on Black studies in schools around the country, but was disappointed by the failure of schools and administrators to build on his efforts. Woodson continuously found himself fighting an uphill battle pursuit of his goal to promote the study of African American history in schools. He believed that education and increasing social and professional contacts among Black and white people could significantly reduce racism and prejudices. Woodson would devote the rest of his life to historical research and work to preserve the history of African Americans as he accumulated a collection of thousands of artifacts and publications. Dr. Woodson died at his home of a heart attack in Washington, D.C. at the age of 74 on April 3, 1950. He is buried at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery in Maryland. Number 9. Black History Month was officially recognized in 1976. It's apparent that Woodson's work with the ASNLH, now known as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, bore fruit through successive generations that made Black studies a staple of most American institutes of higher learning. Furthermore, momentum for Negro History Week continued gathering steam in the following decades as the commemoration of Black contributions became a cultural fixture. President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976, calling upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. Number 10. Dr. Woodson dedicated his life to telling the stories of Black Americans. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, is honored with numerous schools, parks, and buildings across the country bearing his name. Dr. Woodson was also remembered with a U.S. Postal Service stamp in 1984, and his Washington, D.C. home is now a National Historic Site. Many of his publications and foundations are still operational, and his Association for the Study of African American Life and History is still in existence today. It was Dr. Woodson's belief that setting aside a week for studying Black history would build a platform that would make its way into school curriculums across the country and bring light to the many ways that Black Americans have shaped society. And though the nation still has a long way to go, his vision is being realized one step at a time. Black History Month is still celebrated today as activists and leaders work against centuries of discrimination by fighting for Black rights while praising, supporting, and empowering the Black community throughout the month of February. We here at Black Excellist are inspired by Dr. Woodson as we embark on our own crusade to ensure that we preserve the history of Black Americans and leave a digital footprint that narrates our accomplishments and our excellence. We want to thank you all for your support of this channel, since it's important for us to narrate our own stories in our own way. Like Dr. Woodson, we have found our voice and our passion, and we will work even harder to emphasize and highlight the importance, the beauty, and the power of the Black American story.
We appreciate the fact that you stayed with us until the end. Thank you for spending time with us, and don't forget to like this video. Also, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss a video. Bye for now. We will see you tomorrow.